That's a lot of noise.
In the non-headless model, each language needs a separate thing.
It doesn't need, but that's just the way we're saying it. So this image we have an
Why English and Spanish?
zal wel iets beter.
Ja, zit wel op het scherm, zit er nou niet helemaal op. En is dat scheef?
Nee, staat
Ja, nog steeds een beetje scheef, hè? Hoe kan dat?
Staat de tafel niet scheef?
Ik net aan het zitten. Heel assertief kun je helemaal rechts.
Oh ja, iets terug, iets terug. Andere kant op draaien. Ja, zo.
Er zit nog een dingetje op.
Nog wel ietsjes.
Goed niet weten wel. Hey, nog een klein beetje?
Een heel klein beetje.
Dat is jouw maximaal kant op.
Ik heb hier ook een misschien.
Een soundcheck op de stream.
Er moet gewoon een kabel mee.
Kun je...
Maar zo is goed toch?
Ja, kan dit nog iets gekant worden met tegen de klok in?
Zo.
Althans het beeld.
Ja. Je bedoelt?
Want hij is nou een beetje alsof je...
De linkerkant is hoger. Ja.
Nou ja, grappig hè, dat je dat hier veel beter ziet. En dan, als je het groter maakt, dan wordt het nog erger natuurlijk.
Ja, dus als je nou in principe de camera met de klok meekantelt, kan dat?
Ja, dat kan wel.
Dan als het goed is moet het beeld er weer wat weg.
Als ik voor staan dan.
Serieus? Van ons. Markdown Case. Videocamera's van Playboy.
Nou, zo, even kijken. Kun je hem heel 1 mm omhoog, de hele camera, even kijken dan.
Ja, weet je, dit werkt.
Oh ja, ja, nee.
Oh ja,
Ja, nee, toen had je hem.
oh ja, ik zie het helemaal niet meer. Even kijken. Nog zo, ja, bijna.
Omhoog en omlaag kan ik nog.
Ja, even kijken, zo is bijna.
Alleen omdat het recht is.
Ja. Zo is bijna goed. Het beeld moet nog iets met de klok mee, dus voor jou iets tegen de klok in. Heel klein stukje. Heel klein stukje. Ja, zo is goed. Zo is goed.
Nice.
En dan doe ik iets omhoog. Als ik iets...
Hoe zou die nou eigenlijk niet werken? Ja.
Je kan hem
Iets uitzoomen misschien? Of, dat je zeg maar eronder, dat je dat tafelblad ziet. Ja, zo ja. Zoiets is goed.
Kun je ook nog makkelijk springen naar links?
Ja, dat gaan we dus niet doen. Het staat gewoon zo, en dan, want anders krijg je het niet goed. Dan word je helemaal gek als je zit te kijken. Dan zie je het maar niet. Thibaut, can you take your position? Yes. En dan gewoon echt tegen de wand.
Ja, stop het beeld.
Gewoon alleen maar fragment. Dat kan niet, want ik zit daar. Oh ja, dat is goed.
Dat kan niet meer.
Nee, dat is ook niet zo.
Een heel klein beetje.
Maar we hebben nog niet de soundcheck. We lopen ook iets achter, want kijk. Altijd.
Ja, zo staat goed hè? Ja, zo goed. Ja. Doe hem gewoon, kan hij nog wel op?
Ik kan nog iets hoger, maar ik wil hem ook nog iets naar...
Zo, dan moet je een beetje half achter.
Ik moet van iets naar links of iets naar rechts.
Hadden we dit vorig jaar? Zo'n
Het is wel een beetje afleidend.
Ja, ik vind het helemaal niks. We hadden de Wagtail moeten maken, niet voor die. Ik hou er niet van.
Daarom weet ik maar dat ding moet uit. Maar als ik vind het plus belangrijk.
Het leidt heel erg af.
Het idee is cool, maar ik zou het liever weg hebben, denk ik.
Toen die net op het randje stond, zeg maar, van de muur, was het het minst storend, vond ik. Ja? Nou, dus. Wat je nog een beetje wet zit.
We hebben gewoon een logo in beeld, belangrijk, zo, klaar. Hij kan nog een klein stukje terug.
We kunnen ook gewoon niet live editen. Dat is gewoon het logo links onderin laten. Nu staat hij goed. Goed man, zo is mooi. Sam, zijn er veel mensen die dan... Maarten, heb jij de stream? Heb je stream? Hoor je mij? Test, test, test. Test geluid, test geluid, test geluid. Over 5 minuten kun je dit horen. Test geluid, bla 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 bla. Je zijn wel live dan? Ja.
Yo.
Goedemiddag, u bent hier bij 4Digits. Kunt u wat vertellen over de sfeer vanmiddag?
Shit, ik weet niks grappigs, man.
Hoe heet je als ik vraag mag?
Ik heet Hans.
En wat brengt je zo op de Kamasutra-beurs hier in Utrecht? Oh, sorry. Je echte vrouw mag niet weten dat je hier bent. Oké. Is er al iemand ingetuned of weten we dat?
Dat weet ik niet.
Ja, dat kan je zien toch?
Met de Kamasutra beurs en alles.
Even kijken, wat is het adres? Staat het op Slack?
Ja. Maar dat was heel duidelijk, luid en duidelijk komt dat binnen. wordt zelfs deze een keer draait. En dan ben je echt crippled hoor. Dus je dus de hele tijd zo alles doen en dan werkt het. Maar het is zo gevoelig, toetsen, dat als we maar een stofje onder zitten, dan werkt die al niet. Nou, dit wil je toch? Dit is context aware. Dus we zitten hier in de terminal. Dus we staan hier, klik. Kan ik de manual van wat ik zojuist getypt heb. Jongens, dit heb ik dus gewoon niet gemist. Dit wil je, jongen. Dit wil je. Echt groene achtergrond. Wow. Nice. Dit wil je toch?
Dat zal niet.
Links is dus dat. Als je iets hebt. Ik kan hier zo leren openen. Dat werkt soms later. Dus je moet eerst hier klikken. Als ik dit doe, dan wordt het blauw. Als je dus zeg maar in het donker zit, in je scherm heel licht en je moet zeg maar, je gaat dus zo. Je zet gewoon zo'n computer in en zo. Dan drukt hij dubbel klik. Dan wordt het heel even dit blauw. Boem, zo. Weet je wel? Zo blauw met de die dan. Waarom zou ik dus zeg maar. Ik ben zo aan het klikken, ik ben hier aan het kijken, ik ben hier aan het klikken. Dan ga ik hier en dan ga ik hier, dan ga ik dan daar open. Waarom? Ja, Joost heeft een permanente deze stand. Het allermooiste is dat het geeft geen feedback, dus je drukt niet echt op escape. En je hebt druk deze lamp maar dan wel echt goed zie je hè. Dus ik zat laatst met iemand die had er zo heen, dus dat ik zo op escape zat. Er gebeurde niks. Ik drukte hem niet echt in. Dus dat is wel opstaan. Omdat ik er gewend ben van deze.
Nee, die escape toets vind ik nog wel erg.
Het mooie is, hij crasht ook best wel vaak. Als je iets aan het doen bent, volgt het volume. Als het dan de volume wil veranderen en er is iets, dan blijft het volume aan. Het is vooral echt super cool als je op het geluid aanspringt en je wil het volume veranderen. Dat dit dan crasht, dat je dus niks meer kan doen voordat je nog high is. Dat is wel echt een beetje... Escape dan was die balk gecrashed. En daar kun je niks op klikken. Maar dat werkt niet meer. Dit zorgt er eerst voor dat de dingen zo hier zo in beeld komen. Doet hij niet meer?
Ja.
Ja, dan kon je zo nog zo houden. Heel fijn. Precies. Ik krijg hem maar niet gekild. Mooi hè? Mooi bal. Ik heb even een rondleiding rond de touchbar gegeven.
Alleen dat zou ik niet wel nu gewoon aan deze tijd.
Ja. Ja.
Ja, het is misschien wel handig om ook te zeggen dat het niet versterkt is voor de zaal, maar voor de mensen die thuis meeluisteren. Dus ondanks dat mensen je prima kunnen verstaan, moet je toch in de microfoon praten. Want dat versterkte, dat maakt helemaal niet zo heel veel.
wear your shirt collar.
Okay. Is it possible to not have it recorded?
I guess.
Yeah. I would, but I mean, like, I could kind of talk more freely if I wasn't recorded.
That's a tough choice. Oh, that's a very tough choice.
Yeah. Oh,
this is cool. Okay, let's do this first, right? Yeah. Okay, I would prefer to record it, as it's kind of a public event, and I think people are looking forward to all the talks.
Yeah.
So I think it would not be a good idea to just skip, not record one talk, or not stream one talk.
Okay.
So if it's all the same to you,
Yeah.
you will just have to watch your words.
Yeah, I'll just kind of keep things kind of pretty sanitized.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So just put this on my...
Yeah. I think it's perfect like this. It points upward.
Yeah.
Super.
Okay.
Now you can clip this onto your... Yeah, it will work too.
Cool.
Great. When there's questions in the room, please wait until I have passed the microphone.
Sure.
Because you will hear it, but people on the live stream will not.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Are we on? I think we are. Good. Welcome, all of you. And let's say it's fantastic to see so many people here. I see a lot of new faces, people who are just here for the talks, which is very nice. So welcome at the Wagtail Space. We've had 2 days of sprinting already, 2 days of people working on the beautiful Wagtail CMS. Thank you all for attending, and thank you all for making Wagtail better. And I think we will all enjoy the fruits from that. My name is Kees Hink. I am an employee of 4Digits. It's my honor to talk while people are preparing for their presentations. As you may know, this will be recorded and streamed. I'm going to ask you if you have a question afterwards. Wait until you get the microphone from me, and then everyone will be able to hear your answer everywhere in the world. One more thing is we have kind of a tight schedule, so please, at some point I will say no more questions because we have to move on. Right, our first speaker is Kevin Cheung from Google.
Hey guys.
Nice to have you, and Kevin, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay, hey guys. For those who haven't met me, I'm Kevin Cheung. I'm a product manager on Google Cloud. I just started a month ago, so all of this is kind of very preliminary ideas that I've learned a month on the job. So just take that with a grain of salt. I'm going to be talking about Google and how we look at Wagtail and the CMS solutions that we're exploring. So let's get right into it. So kind of 4 S's, well 5 I guess, I added another one there, of considerations that we're making. First is scope. So Google Cloud now represents not only Google Cloud Platform, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, but also it has Maps API, hardware, so like the Chromebooks we sell to businesses. It has G Suite, so like the Gmail that you guys use for work maybe. And all of that is coming under Google Cloud, which is kind of a new thing that we've just announced. And so that means that all of our websites need to come under kind of this one unified brand of what Google is selling to other businesses. And that includes kind of this ecosystem of products that work together. As you can imagine, there's thousands of sites that are going to be now coming together under one sort of central system. So that starts to begin set the stage for the challenges that we're going to have. And there's also these marketing campaigns. So this is separate from the existing core site. These marketing campaigns each can have these microsites. So we want to try a new way of presenting this particular product to a particular target audience. We want to create a new microsite for that audience specifically. And that might be a microsite for just C-level executives and what they see and what they like to see on a website. very different from what a developer wants to see. So the second consideration is speed. We have a huge kind of obsession with speed at Google. So as you can imagine, like everyone sees how fast the search result came back on the Google search, and that's something that we obsess over, and that obsession kind of carries through the entire organization, and so we are hoping for very fast speeds on the website. We want to be able to also publishing speed is also very important. So we want to be able to have publishers push content very quickly and anytime. Security is, of course, a big factor. There's actually a lot of people that have a lot to gain by taking over Google's infrastructure and data. So we make sure that every part of the stack is held to the very high standards. Scale, we have about 40,000 pages that we need to organize and have content contributors manage. And we have millions of visitors per day. And the fifth one that I added last minute is streamline. And this is the biggest kind of business value that a CMS provides for us is we currently have engineers that are hand building these pages. They're spending hours essentially being a manual CMS. So all of that time that the engineers spend and all the coordination efforts that it takes to now have a content manager have the engineer understand what they want. It takes a lot of back and forth. Make this change on the website that looks like this. The engineer says, is this what you want? And the contributor says, actually, no, this is what I want. So there's this back and forth process. And that takes hours and hours of very expensive engineering time, also marketing time. So the content owners, we need to really think about them as a user for this product. And there's thousands of people that are going to be logging into this CMS with different ACLs, access controls, and different people will have different kind of domains of expertise. Everyone will have a unique publishing workflow, so different people need to approve different things at different times. We need to localize, and there's about 400,000 words that we need to localize. Total on the web as a kind of a, and it's kind of impossible to do without automated processes. And there's different templates that are appropriate for each workflow. So various things to think about. Kept it short so we can just have like a discussion. I personally just don't like sitting and taking in information. I like to kind of engage. So if anyone has any questions, we can kind of learn more, and yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I was actually interested because you're saying for Google you're looking into the options of Wagtail. Does that mean you're considering of offering Wagtail as a service from Google?
No.
What is your?
Yeah, so currently we have teams at Google that already use Wagtail. I'm coming from the perspective of like Google Cloud. So there's the Google main blog uses Wagtail to manage their CMS content. And also there's a couple other teams that use it. Google Cloud is specifically looking at it for our web pages as well, kind of like the Google blog team is. And that's just for internal management of our content. And so what we would do is we'd have the kind of a fork of Wagtail that we adapt to the Google kind of internal infrastructure and use internally.
Does that mean that if you're going to fork it, that you're going to also extend development on it and also give back to the community those developments? Or?
Yeah, that's certainly. I'm not sure. I haven't really kind of spoken with the existing teams at Google that use Wagtail extensively, so I don't know how much they're contributing back as they're developing on it. But that's certainly a consideration that our team is thinking about. Yeah.
So at the moment, the workflow of Wagtail is pretty limited. You have like a draft state and a published state. That's about it. So can you tell a little bit more about the various workflows and how that goes?
Yeah. So as I understand it, as kind of out of the box, Wagtail has been surprisingly well-fitting, like supporting of the publishing workflow for the blog team. And so I think that out of the box it supports kind of workflows that exist already. But as you can imagine, the blog workflow is just kind of one of many that we need to support for if we want to support an entire website that feature products and marketing and various different initiatives that go on, events that we hold, maybe like partner access to our website. So there's all these different things that have very unique workflows, and I guess the answer which you're not going to be satisfied with is I'm still exploring these different processes and mapping them to the kind of support that Wagtail provides, and really mapping out what are the things that we need to build on top of Wagtail to support, workflow A, workflow B, and thinking about, is that cost really high, really low? So that's the exploration I'm doing, and so as I'm going through, happy to kind of share my findings with the community, and I think that, just kind of personal thoughts, like, if we do end up building and adding a lot to the Wagtail core, I think it could be a really great opportunity for us to be a big player in the community. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. What's the selection process like for choosing a system, as in this case of Wagtail that's going to be used by so many? Sorry. What's the selection process like that ends up choosing a product like Wagtail that will be used by all of these users within Google?
So how does essentially how do we adopt a new framework to use within Google? Yeah, how do you choose it? I think that there's certainly a vetting process that goes on. So, for example, as I understand it, whenever Google brings in an open source project to be used for any kind of Google operation, the security team first of all vets like line by line, like what's in this thing, and that's kind of expected. So is that kind of what you're like the process that we go through to make sure that the code itself is very clean and usable and secure, and also the process that I'm going through, which is understanding what sort of very custom code that only Google will use and we don't expect anyone else in the community to use. So integration with our very specific internal tools. What do those look like? What does it look like for kind of features that we build on Wagtail that the general community can use and we hope to just give back? And what does that look like? So those are kind of things that I'll be looking at in my exploration. And I guess this is a good time to say if there's any specific things that people here in this community have run into as they're applying Wagtail to different kind of large-scale operations. And I was talking to Cody about localization just today and how her organization has looked at scaling to 67 different countries. And so I'd love to hear set up meetings with folks here who have experience kind of using Wagtail and applying it in industry. So that's what this slide was for, really. Yeah.
Are there any more questions? Really? We're way ahead of schedule. I want to thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to come here.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, before we go to the next talk, I would ask everyone who just arrived, there's lots of more spaces in here, so you can...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no. We can start it. Yeah. So, I'm going to head out. Let's sync up over message. Meet up on, yeah. Good trip. Thanks. Yes. You're free. Thanks.
Oh, why are you up? Put it underneath your t-shirt.
Which part?
Yeah, the microphone.
There's one more bar stool over there, if you want. And one more chair to sit in. Maybe you get a better view.
Is the sound good enough?
There's a chair over there in the middle, and one over there. If you're good like that, it's okay.
Boop, 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 boop. Okay.
So, if everyone has a spot, Thibaut Collard will talk to us.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. Let me know if the screen isn't big enough in the back and I'll turn on the resolution. So today I'm coming to you from Finland. I'm one of the members of the Wagtail core team, and I've been working on this new editor for Wagtail called Wagtail, kind of an easy play on word, which is built on this framework called Draft.js. So it's a framework to build rich text editors. Initially, I had prepared this talk as a big lecture on the history of the project and how we used it and anything and everything, and it was going to take 3 hours. So I scratched it all, and this is just going to be demos about what Draft.js can do in and outside of Wagtail and what you can do with it, basically, and cool things you can build with Draft.js. And yeah, if you want to learn more about why we did this, why we picked Draft.js, and so on, I've been writing blog posts about this, so you can find them on the Wagtail website, and I'll link them in my talk. So first of all, demos. This is the Wagtail editor, as you can see on the screen on the left-hand side. Don't worry too much about the right-hand side. This is just a preview, so you can see the HTML it generates, but everything is going to happen on the left here. So this is pretty much the same interface as in Wagtail with the toolbar. Except the controls are a bit different because I configured it differently. But otherwise, this is what you get in Wagtail so far. And the point of this demo site, which I called Wagtail Playground, is to show both from an end user's perspective what the editor does and how it works, and also from a developer's perspective what's happening behind the scenes. So again, left-hand side is the user-facing widget, which is Wagtail. And right-hand side is what you would get on the live page in Wagtail once you've published it, so the final HTML. Talking about behind the scenes, so I can show you very quickly how Draft.js works. So you type something into the page, hey, Arnhem, and it displays it instantly in the editor, of course, and then it gets stored into Draft.js's format. Which is this structure here, so as JSON, that has a list of blocks for basically all of your paragraphs. Each block has the paragraph's text, and then if there are some links or some bold, it's storing where to apply those styles on the text. But in terms of technical content, I think I'll stop there. Just show very briefly that once you render this into a Wagtail site, of course, it converts it into HTML. So you can see the HTML version here, which is rendered on the right-hand side. And just for fun, I also made a Markdown conversion. So it's the same principle. We take the blocks, we go through them, and we convert them into however we want to display the content. So that's how it works behind the scenes. Back to the demos. I have basically made a big list of links of cool things to do with this and cool things we've done in Wagtail and outside. So I'll start with the in Wagtail part, show you very quickly what we've done. So I'll switch to this demo site, which is the Wagtail demo site. So again, pretty much the same toolbar, same controls. And I just want to show you very quickly some of the features we've built. So one of them that I'm quite proud of is this quick shortcuts to make titles, for example, using the syntax of Markdown. So 2 hashtag signs like that, 2 pound signs, and then your text. And your text becomes a title. And of course, it works with lists as well, and block quotes too. Throughout this demo, if you want to look at the keyboard shortcuts that I used, they are on the left-hand side right here. So that's an example of a feature that Draft.js makes it easy to implement. And I particularly like this one because it allows you to keep your hands on the keyboard at all times. And usually those shortcuts are much easier to remember than the ones from, say, Word or Google Docs. But of course, if you're used to normal shortcuts, you can still use the Command B and so on to turn your formatting, so no biggie. Next feature on my list is something we've spent quite a bit of time on. So as most of you probably know, as an end user of the CMS, sometimes you use the editor and you do your formatting and you enter your content directly inside the CMS. But quite often as well, you'll take your content from Word or from an email or just from a web page. And well, you want to paste it into Wagtail, and that can create some issues. So we spent quite a bit of time making sure that this space would be handled. So here I have a Google Docs that has all sorts of Google Docs formatting, heading levels and bold and so on, but also things that are Google Docs specific. And I can just quickly show you if I copy it all and paste it into this draft.js field. It's going to correctly strip the formatting that's not allowed and only keep what is allowed in editor, which is, in that case, it's what is in the toolbar at the top, basically. So yeah, very quick demo, but it was a lot of work to get this going, and I think it's going to fix lots of problems for lots of people. Next on my list, so far this is pretty much basic rich text I've shown you. I also want to show you that we can build more advanced things with this. So this page on the Draftail demo site that you can go to has a lot of different plugins, like for example this text counter plugin that also tells you how long of a read your content is going to be. This special text style that's kind of redacted text. Not sure if you'll use it, but it's good to see that you can build it if you want to. Things like embeds and also code blocks with syntax highlighting. The syntax highlighting is like really toned down here, but I assure you it's there. And this is a big toolbar. It has all of the default options turned on here. So some of those you'll find useful, like strike through and mark and so on. Some of them are very esoteric. I'll move on towards more interesting things. So far it was only things that are available in Wagtail's version of the Draft.js editor. Now we're going to look at other people's Draft.js implementations. So things that I didn't do, and no one involved with Wagtail did, just things from the Draft.js community. And the idea behind those things is that they'll either inspire you to use them on your sites or inspire us to put them into Wagtail directly. One of my favorites is Emojis. Who doesn't love emojis, to be honest? So here, this is a very basic example. Emojis are just plain text, so you can, of course, paste them anywhere inside a text block or a text area, but you can also build fancy controls like this that give you an emoji picker, and then you can choose one and insert it wherever the cursor is. So still fairly basic, but yeah, emojis, come on. Next up, we have mentions. So another way to facilitate entering content. For the emojis, we had a picker. For mentions, well, this is the same system as Twitter, for example, where you start with an @ sign, and then you get some sort of autocomplete on your content. So here it's autocompleting by a list of people. That might not be very useful in a CMS, but you could also autocomplete by page title or anything and everything, really. This is very low level, then what you do with it is completely up to you, and I'm sure lots of sites won't have any use for it. I'm sure lots of bigger sites might find a use case. Another quick example, videos and embeds. So we have those in Wagtail already. I just want to show you that we're not limited to the current implementation. So here I paste my YouTube video inside of this field, and it automatically shows you the player, which doesn't sound like much compared to what we have in Wagtail at the moment, but I think it's still pretty cool. By the way, the sumo tournament is on right now, and it's very good. You should watch it. That's a more advanced counter plugin where it counts the characters, the words, the lines, and so on. I think this is pretty cool in particular because it has nothing to do with rich text. You can use this on any type of field, even if it's just plain text, and it's equally as useful. So yeah, definitely worth having in Wagtail, in my opinion. Stickers. I don't use stickers much myself, but I'm sure some sites could use some ponies and fairies and unicorns. I'll move on to the next one. Not sure how many people use mathematical formulas on their sites, but again, that's something you can do very easily with Draft.js, where you can quickly have some widget that pops up over the editor, and allows you to edit the formula in a way that is user-friendly and then displayed differently in the editor and on the live site as well. So it could be useful to lots of us. Same goes for LaTeX. I'm not sure again how common LaTeX is inside CMSs, but it's the same principle. You have a UI that's displayed in the editor that just shows you the rendered version, and then a field to customize the content. That looks a bit like Streamfield as well, and there are reasons that why we would want to use Streamfield for this over Draft.js, but it's just cool to show that it's possible. Something much simpler, but I still like quite a lot. Again, coming back to Markdown, so coming back, yay, to Markdown, and yeah, just another way to do your formatting without having to touch the toolbar, basically. Right now, we only have this in Wagtail for block level things like quotes and titles, but there would be nothing preventing us from having it for inline styles as well. Sorry, I just look through my notes again. Wow, we're right at the end already. I'm right on time. That's great. So what next? I want to quickly mention a few ways for you to dig deeper into this, and also for you to contribute back to these efforts, because in my opinion, this new editor, this is just the first version, and the point of this first version was to replace the previous editor, not to really do anything too fancy. But we definitely want to build upon this and get those fancy user experiences into our CMS. So first of all, again, the best way to learn more about this is to read those blog posts that are available on the wagtail.io site. And in terms of helping out, well, something I would love to see more people doing is trying out the editor inside and outside of Wagtail and basically stress testing it a bit. So a few people have tried it and I have noticed issues with it quite quickly. So for example, I'll show you a bug. I shouldn't do that, but I'll still show you anyway. If you select an image and then press some specific combination of keys, the editor just disappears and crashes, which is bad. I still think it's better than what the previous editor did. The previous editor just looked like everything worked, even though it didn't, and had like some invalid content in it. Whereas here, at least it's explicit that, oh, something bad happened. And if you would stress test it like that, or give it to your clients to stress test as well, they'll arrive on this type of UI that's meant for, oh, there is an error. And from that, they can submit a report saying, oh, yes, I tried this and that, and boom. And yeah, the more the merrier, basically. Another way to help would be to work on the user guide. So this editor is available standalone outside of Wagtail, not just inside of Wagtail. So it also has its standalone user guide, which features some of the most important features like the shortcuts, the copy-paste support, and has this big table full of keyboard shortcuts. I think there is lots of room for improvement here, especially in terms of the language we use when we talk to those end users of the CMS. So if anyone is keen to work on that, please let me know and I'll show you the way. And yeah, just collaborate on new features. So that's what we did during the sprint. We had a few people working on making existing rich text plugins work with this new editor, and also making sure that whatever we built next would have the good APIs and templates to make it work. So yeah, just getting involved, basically. Thank you for listening. I'm Thibaut, and if you want to look at those slides and this demo, it's available at this URL. That's me.
Thank you, Thibaut, for your talk and for all your work on championing this great improvement for Wagtail. Are there any questions about this? Yes, Rob, someone whose name I know. Great.
First of all, thanks Thibaut for the major efforts on getting this thing done. Could you please elaborate how you can migrate your existing content from the existing Halo editor to Draftail?
Yeah, that's something I didn't cover at all. So there isn't much of a migration. The reason for that is that when we decided to bring this into Wagtail, the decision was made that we should still make it swappable between one editor and the other. So behind the scenes, the content is still stored the same way. it might differ a bit in formatting. So for example, Hello had this issue where it would insert BRs everywhere, and the new editor doesn't. So you might not have that in your content. But any content that has been created with Hello is usable with the new editor as well.
Okay. Also for making some custom plugins in Halo.
Yeah, so that's something that we didn't support at all. Okay. So if you made a custom plugin, there's a new API that's documented in the docs, and hopefully it supports what you did. If it didn't, if it doesn't, please come to me. But yeah, no support.
Okay, so the most important thing is you just install a new version, your content is over with no problems. That's great. Cool, thanks.
Other questions? Yes, I will just pass it on.
Could you elaborate on how effective this Ristex editor is for copy-paste from Microsoft Word?
Yep.
And second question is, suppose we do an embed, like a YouTube embed, and we want to customize the HTML, for example, adding a wrapper around it. Would that be possible, or how would that be possible?
So for the embed, you mean the embed on the live site, not in the editor?
Not in the editor, but on the live site.
Okay. Support for copy pasting. It's not actually that hard. It is, I'm kidding. It depends on how you configure the editor. Basically, since Draft.js doesn't use HTML to store its data, it's quite easy for us to go through the Draft.js structure and content and decide, oh, this type shouldn't be allowed, this type should be allowed, and so on. So what this means is that there might be some things that Word does that won't be preserved inside Wagtail, but there will never be the other way around, like some things you paste that are not allowed but still present in the content. So for example, here I have lots of testing documents for all of the Word processors. Here this is a long document with all sorts of Word-specific formattings, like, yeah, anything and everything. And I'll just show you what happens when you paste it. Oh. Well, okay, let's take a smaller subset. This is a very big document, so I might just be crashing my computer right now. Okay. Okay, you won't see Word today, you'll just see Google Docs again, and just a smaller subset of it. That feels safer. So here, for example, the Google Docs HTML already uses an H1 tag. So when Draft.js receives it, it knows it can convert it to its header 1 format, and that's what it does here. It also receives a U tag for the underline, and again, since it's available here, it puts it to use. But for example, for superscript and subscript, which are enabled here as well, it doesn't receive the right tag because that's not how Google Docs implements it in their word processor. So here it fails to preserve it. But the issues you'll face with this are always those types of issues, failing to preserve some formats, never the other way around, preserving format that shouldn't be there. And so that was your first question. For the second one, the support for this isn't great at the moment. The reason behind this is that we prioritized improving the editor UX rather than customization of how you render this content on the site. So for embeds, I think there is a way. It's not documented, but there is a way. But that's on the roadmap, basically. We want to have an API to do this for any and all types of content. This is one of the reasons why we developed this editor initially. We wanted to be able to have very advanced and very custom content, much more custom and domain-specific than embeds. So there is an API that does this. It's just not into Wagtail just yet.
Thank you. Anyone else? Koen.
Yeah, I'd like to contribute to the answer of the question that the Wagtail way of embedding like a video is making a stream field and a paragraph block, and then you can choose, and so then you have the full control.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone else? Okay, great.
Thank you,
Thibaut. Thank you. So before we continue with our next speaker, who is Matt, I think, I would like take some of your time to talk about housekeeping. We have 2 more talks before the break. After Matt is Lisa. Right after that, after Lisa's talk, we would like to go outside and take a group photo. So if you would kindly all move outside, and we will do it in the park opposite here by the great tree. And after that there's coffee for half an hour. We're running ahead of schedule, so we won't stick to the, I think 3 o'clock we were supposed to start again. We'll just take 1.5 hour off, and then we will start again.
Try to.
So,
in there, yep.
Yeah.
Don't hit the cable too much because.
Okay. And so I would like to introduce the next speaker, who is Matt Westcott from Torchbox, the company that started Wagtail originally, made it open source, and made our lives a lot easier.
Okay.
So thanks in advance for that.
Okay. Right, let's see.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay, I've got some. Got it. Right. Okay. Right. So earlier this week, when Martin asked if I'd have had a title for my talk yet, I said, well, I'm not sure yet. It's going to be something about the experience of opening up a project to the community and learning to sort of let go of ownership of the code. So in the end, I figured it had to be called Let It Go. So I've got lots of experience as a developer building content managed sites, and over that time I've built up lots of opinions on how a CMS and content management should work. But it was always clear that if Wagtail was going to take off as a project, it had to become bigger than me and my opinions. And that process of making it work as a community project is something that I definitely didn't have experience in before. And you can't really approach this as a standard project team due to the nature of how people are contributing. People are dipping in and out of the project on their own terms and on their own schedules, making their own decision about which tasks they want to work on, which don't always align with the ones that you as the maintainer consider to be the most urgent things. And the fact that people are often working from a kind of incomplete view of the project, not having the background of the full picture of the design decisions that have come before them. And actually, on that note, I have to say it has been absolutely amazing to have so many of you here this week, committing your energies into the project for a really sustained period. That's been fantastic. It's been really appreciated. So managing the setup of an open source project is something that I've had to learn on the job, and I'm very much still learning. I don't consider myself an expert on this at all, but along the way, along the 4 and a bit years of maintaining the project, I found a few guidelines and coping strategies that have helped me, and hopefully these are ones that I managed to mostly stick to and live up to. So while I didn't have any experience of running something like Wagtail before, there was some experience I could draw on from the other side as a contributor to open source projects. And so before I picked up Django, I started out learning Ruby on Rails, and I thought my approach was to jump in at the deep end. I wasn't going to start out with little toy projects. I wanted to just jump straight into building my pretty complex real-world website and just really attack any problems that I encountered along the way. Now, I don't want to make this a slagging match between Rails and Django. Well, who am I kidding? Of course I do want to make it a slagging match between Rails and Django, but to cut a long story short, along the way on this project, I hit a task which was the equivalent of answering the question, in which years did a Steven Spielberg movie win an Oscar? So in this particular data model, we have the Oscars are a ceremony which has many awards, each of which has many movies in it, and each movie has a director. So in Django ORM terms, this would look like this filter on award, __, movie, __, director, name. So it's just joining a bunch of tables and querying across those. In Rails, you'd sort of define those as, within your definition of a ceremony, it has many awards, an award, and then a ceremony has many winning movies that go, and that's a relation that goes through awards. And then to get to the directors, you would have to go through that another level, except it wouldn't let you do that at the time. I don't know if they've fixed this now, but there's no way to do this sort of chaining of relations. So if you're querying across 2 tables, then that would be fine, but any more than that, and you just hit a brick wall. There's just no way of doing that query. So I thought, okay, this is great. It's time for me to become an open source contributor, and yeah, so I sort of dug into the Rails code, submitted a patch, and in retrospect, my patch was probably pretty bad. There's some pretty horrible SQL querying under the hood, and I'd written 1 test for this when, in fact, it probably needed more like 20. And the core team took a look at it and went sort of, no, and they kind of brushed me off, saying, and it felt like they're saying, oh yeah, you don't do queries like that. You shouldn't do that. It's probably inefficient or something. I don't know. And that's when I really felt that I had nowhere to go from there. It's that I'd found something that Rails didn't let me do, and worse than that, I wasn't even being allowed to fix it. So when I started on Wagtail, I kind of made a personal vow not to let that happen, and so not to close the door on anyone. And obviously, yeah, naturally, there will be times when I get that same feeling when a pull request comes through, and I'm like, no, let's not do that. But that might not be because it's even a bad idea. It might just be that coming from my sort of old fart background of having opinions of it should be done this way, and if it might just be that this pull request is just not the way I would have chosen to do things. And so yeah, as I say, I've formed these opinions over a long time, and this is where I need to sort of learn to let it go. And so, the question that I find myself asking here is, what would need to change to make this pull request acceptable to me? Going back to the Rails example, if they'd sort of given me a bit of feedback to say, yeah, you need to write 20 more tests, or well, actually, yeah, we can't really accept this until we've spent 6 months refactoring the ORM to make it more spaghetti, less spaghetti-ish, then that would have sort of left the path open. I might not have followed that path in the end, but that way I wouldn't have felt sort of excluded from the whole project. And who knows, maybe I'd be at some other conference somewhere about my CMS built in Rails. But well, so there we go. So one place where this came up recently, well, in Wagtail 2.0, was the update to scheduled publishing. It's now possible to have a live page and have another version of that page waiting waiting to go live at a future date. And often when you're developing, you'll sort of lay down all of these assumptions and preconditions in your head about, okay, this, so when we were first developing scheduled publishing, it was, okay, this whole workflow makes perfect sense as long as we don't have a live version and a scheduled one in flight at the same time. And when someone comes from outside the project and says, hey, what if we change this behavior so that we actually do allow a live one to exist at the same time? And it gives me the initial no sort of reaction, because it feels like I've sort of built this house of cards and then someone is saying, oh, what if we just swapped out this card at the bottom layer? And And I think this is actually a place where it can be an asset to have fresh people coming into the project and not sort of being constrained by this mental baggage of we can't change this because of reasons. So in this case, the question, it became like, what would it take to convince me that this change is okay? And so in the end, so Patrick at The Motley Fool, he was working on this feature, we asked him to put together this RFC document describing in detail how all the interactions would work, under what circumstances things would get published. And in the end, that persuaded me that this was a safe change and it wasn't going to send the house of cards crashing down. So I think this is a good example of a place where letting go of the code has enabled us to make Wagtail better for everyone and to bring in that new perspective. That doesn't mean that necessarily every sort of new proposal that comes along is going to make the cut. One theme that often comes up is people wanting to sort of add in hooks to like low-level features like being able to customize the permission model, and I'm quite cautious about that sort of thing because it paints us into a corner when it comes to building new features and refactoring code, and it's because we can never be quite sure that whatever changes we make in the code will be consistent with this unseen customization that someone out there has made. So it kind of makes it a bit difficult for us to have any level of certainty there. And it's kind of hard to make that argument on a GitHub ticket when someone has come to you with with a change that solves their immediate problem, and I'm having to turn it down for these fluffy hypothetical reasons. And I've been kind of known to spend hours at a time on a one-paragraph response trying to just get the wording right on this. But it's important to me that I put in that effort when people have taken the time to analyze a problem, figure out a solution, and submit that. And that they deserve better than just a sort of one-line, oh, I'm not so sure kind of response. So that's another sort of lesson that I've found for myself is, be prepared to justify your decisions. There is a lot to be said for sort of intuition and following your instincts with developing. I'm probably not the only person who's had the experience of when I've been sort of estimating a piece of work, saying, yeah, I think this is going to be a 5-day job, and then someone's like, oh, really, so long? And then I kind of back down, oh, yeah, you're right, maybe it's a 2-day job, okay. And then in the end, it's a 5-day job because it turns out I should have trusted my gut reaction. But yeah, on a true collaborative project like Wagtail, it doesn't really cut it to just make that argument from authority and say, I say it's going to be a 5-day job and I'm the expert, so my decision stands. You have to kind of dig into where that intuition is coming from and justify it to yourself. And sometimes you'll come out of that saying, yes, there is a specific reason why it's going to take this long because it's dealing with this sort of awkward bit of code. Other times when you examine it, you realize, okay, no, you're right, that this is straightforward, and as it turned out in the case of the scheduled publishing, that was a lot more straightforward than I'd feared. But yeah, let's lose minutes there. And so another thing that's sort of a natural consequence of people participating on a volunteer basis is that there's no real predictability of when they'll be available. They might be working sort of solidly on a feature for a week and then bundle that code up into a pull request and then just be unavailable for the next 6 months. And that's fine, because once you've made a contribution, then you don't owe us anything. You're not required to follow up on any feedback that might come up. Obviously, we hope you will, of course, but this is the nature of open source collaboration. So yeah, you don't owe us anything. So it does mean that when I'm faced with the question of like, is this piece of work complete and ready to be merged, I find it helpful to keep this graph in my head. So I'd like to think that the awesomeness of Wagtail is increasing over time, and when you're evaluating an individual pull request, the only real criterion you've got to judge against is, does this change represent an increase in awesomeness overall? And it can be sort of easy to kind of fall into the temptation of saying, okay, yeah, this change is increasing the awesomeness by this much, but if it did this other thing as well, the awesomeness would be right up here. And obviously, yeah, we don't really want to fall into that trap. There's a saying, and this might just be a peculiarly English language thing, which is, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. The idea being, yeah, if someone gives you a horse as a present, you don't go, oh, well, it's all right, but its teeth are a bit horrible. So yeah, yeah, we do really appreciate the contributions that we get, and yeah, I've been on the receiving end of this occasionally myself. So in Wagtail 2.0, we added the command line utility that would sort of go through your project code base, updating the module paths now that they've changed for 2.0. And there's a bit of a feeling among the core team of, well, okay, that's okay, but what if it did a few other things, like maybe add some on-delete to the foreign keys? And I kind of had to sort of push back on that, saying, no, this is doing one well-defined thing. It is increasing the overall awesomeness. And I think, yeah, if you ever find that, yeah, if you've submitted a pull request and you'll find yourself in that position of being asked to do just one more thing, I think you should be absolutely at liberty to push back on that. I think maybe we should have a name for this thing in the same way that you have like yak shaving and bike shedding. We should be able to, yeah, no, you're just gift horsing now. So, yeah. I should sort of add a bit of proviso to that, is the definition of what we consider as awesomeness might not necessarily be obvious. Yeah, intuitively think, well, yeah, if I'm adding a new feature, then that is going to sort of increase the awesomeness of the project, but it has to be complete, and which includes things like documentation and testing. Otherwise, it's, yeah, if it's not sort of tested, and then there's a chance that there might be regressions in future releases, which means that it's not really a complete feature in that case. It might, because it's just kind of a bit of extra code that might get forgotten about. And likewise, there might be some kind of level of technical debt that's, like as I was saying with the people wanting custom permission models, that might make future development a bit trickier, which is arguably a decrease in awesomeness. And if there's and it's no good having a feature that is that's sort of adding it's lots of amazing bells and whistles, but it's just making the user interface look like the cockpit of an airliner. So, because the user experience is a big thing for Wagtail. So it's we need to kind of balance all of these things in how we define awesomeness. And my final point is to keep the human touch. Sometimes it's when you're on the receiving end of bug reports, you can go into this sort of adversarial mindset of, okay, I need to close this ticket as quickly as possible, and it turns into this kind of game of whack-a-mole, and this ticket is a duplicate of that one, and then just a duplicate of this, of ticket 1357, close. And I think, that's something I've realized quite early on. We need to avoid that, because we are all humans, citation needed, and it's good to be nice to people in this way. So when I'm sort of closing, responding to tickets, I always kind of make a point of saying hi at username, and it sounds a bit silly, but this is like not something that really comes naturally to me. I'm not really a people person, so it's but I think it's important to make this sort of effort and try not be friendly. Don't just try and close things as quickly as possible. There's a few tricks that I've found useful for this is like GitHub's saved replies. So it means that when there are certain kinds of things like bug reports that don't go into enough detail, I can drop in my polite response rather than my frustrated one. And so, yeah, this sort of thing, it really helps to hopefully keep the project as amicable as possible. So, yeah, that's my lessons learned. Never close the door on people, be prepared to justify your decisions, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and keep the human touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for a great talk. Any questions? No one has anything to add.
Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa. While she's setting up the microphone with Koen and the laptop, I will do some other housekeeping stuff.
Oh,
does anyone have a Thunderbolt HDMI ready? Could maybe Thunderbolt HDMI? I think we have them downstairs somewhere.
You've got a pocket?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a break after this. Like I just said, please go outside for the photo. After that, after the break, we will have 3 full-time slots for talks. After that, there's lightning talks. Who doesn't know what a lightning talk is? Who does know what a lightning talk is?
Like this?
Okay, great. So in brief, a lightning talk is a talk that's very short. It's excellent for if you have something to share that you want to share quickly and then run away and wait for the questions to happen afterwards at the bar. So a typical lightning talk is about 5 minutes. We set the limit at 7. So if you have anything that you worked on, any experience that you had with Wagtail, or maybe not even Wagtail, maybe just Django, that you want to share, contact me, contact Maarten, contact Koen, so we can put your name on the list. We're very curious to know about how you use Wagtail or other Django related stuff. Yeah. So please, if you have anything to share with us, do. Or JavaScript, yeah, okay. React stuff, yeah. Yes. Looks like we're good, right?
Yes.
Okay, Lisa Adams, please.
Hi everyone. I hate public speaking, so this is not my favorite thing to do. So I work for precult.org, and I'm a project manager / product owner / therapist at work. Not an actual therapist. So the project that I manage is called Springster, and it's part of the Girl Effect portfolio that is funded by the Nike Foundation. The purpose of the project is to provide girls in developing countries with access to information about healthcare, financial literacy, and basically just like defying conventions and creating a new norm for them. So I'm giving you that background because I'm tackling this topic, which is probably not going to make me very popular in this room. So I'll mostly just be talking, but Cody at the back once told me that the only event that she comes to where there are no bathroom lines for females are at tech events. And that got me thinking, because I was like, that's true. So I was really thinking about why there are so many bathroom lines for females in other places, the airport, nightclubs, church. Most gatherings generally is where us females make friends. It simply just makes me feel like my comfort and that of many other women are secondary. We aren't really in control of these lines that we end up in. And that is kind of undignifying. In my pondering about this, I came across a TED talk by John Carey. He's an architect. He kicks off his TED talk saying that nobody is immune to bad design. He went into architecture because he believed that it was about creating spaces for people to live their best lives. But what he found is a profession massively disconnected from the people it affects. He believes that this is because architecture remains a white, male, elitist profession and seemingly unconcerned with some of the greatest needs of the world, and even just the simple needs like women going to the bathroom. Design has a unique ability to make people feel valued, respected, honored, and seen. If we all took a second to think about some of the places that you inhabit and how they make you feel, where you feel unhappy, demotivated, unproductive, uninspired, or simply where you live, and how these places can be better designed with you in mind. In many cases, we don't really have much control over how those things are designed, but we all should. The bathrooms and standing in queues may seem like a small thing that annoy myself and Cody and probably the few other 3 females in this room. And I kind of like question myself on how the situations can be better solved. Why can't I just use the men's? John Carey says that the better question is, what is wrong with the men who designed these bathrooms? John says that this is representative of a much more serious issue. The contemporary world was built by men who have really taken the time to understand how people unlike them experience their designs. Thoughtful design can make people feel respected, seen, and valued. And very simply, dignified. John says that dignity is to design what justice is to law and what health is to medicine. So this really brings me to the importance of design in all elements. In the work that I do, it goes from the CMS system that we use right through to the way in which we deliver our sites to our end users. We have 2 users to keep in mind. Our content management team, which makes up about 30 people. Those 30 people are across 4 countries in 5 languages. Our users, on the other hand, are 2.2 million girls, 67 countries, 14 languages. Some of them are boys, too, surprising. So where I'm going with this is that we need to start identifying who our end users really are, what their circumstances are, where they are from, what languages they speak, what devices they are accessing. And we need to bring them to life in creating spaces for more of their input. And I would really like to see more of that in the Wagtail core development. We're creating a content management system, but I'm not really seeing many content representatives. And where that comes up strongly for me is in even the editorial language. I think there's been phenomenal improvements on that. But I'd just like to share some of how we do this at Precal. In my team, what I've done to bring this to life is by creating personas of each of our users. And in our team, we now have a process where these personas are addressed in our technical design from implementation right through to our QA processes. QA needs to pass for referralware and the rest of the goals that I'm going to show you. And what we do is we identify that referralware is 16 years old. She is in grade 10. She speaks Setswana. She has her own mobile device. And she can access WhatsApp, Facebook, and browse free basic sites. She's got some restrictions on the internet connectivity that she has. And then we also implement some personal things and attributes where she's determined to be a prefect at school, and she wants to be a moderator on one of our sites too. We also got Tandy, who's 14 years old. She shares a device with her aunt. And you can see that we've also just implemented some of the challenges that she has. So no place to hide to read sensitive content on Springster. Generally afraid of judgment or whatever the case may be. We have Pac-man, she's 19 and she's Indonesian. She's married with a 2-year-old daughter, and the only time that she has access to the internet is when she's in a shopping mall and has Wi-Fi. Abida is 12. She's also got a shared device. She can browse websites, and she's got a 2G connection. I'm just calling out some of them. And so we take all of these personas, like I said, and ensure that our developments work for each one of these individuals before we can say, let's deploy this. So my goal in my responsibility with delivering this product, this is what I summed it up as, ensuring that we are reaching out to our users and being inclusive of them in our design process. We can provide them with dignity. Just because they are restricted to feature phones and we are not designing smartphones with incredible and flawless tricks and features, does not mean that they do not deserve quality design. So I am personally committed to quality and being responsible with how we are making our users feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. Any questions? No? Ah, at the back, Thibault. 1 second.
Yes, thank you for your talk. It was amazing. Do you think it would be possible to develop user personas to represent all of the users of Wagtail across all of the types of companies and specifically the scale of websites that use the CMS?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I'd like to contribute to the Wagtail core team. And I think we have a really good start with Springster. Last year we had what we call the Springster Lab, and we got all our content partners from all over the world in one space for a couple of days and did a retrospective on the CMS. We got a lot of feedback from them, and that's definitely a starting point. And I think we can use that as a base. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
So for people to be conscious and aware of these kinds of needs, I suspect that many of the developers who are active in Wagtail and developing it are not familiar with the audience or these kinds of specific use cases. What can the community do you think, to be more empathetic to these kinds of use cases and be aware of them? What would help the community to think along these lines for this kinds of audience while they are developing products, mostly because they are so far removed from these kinds of technological challenges for many of these users. Any thoughts on that?
One immediate thing would be if I attend the next Wagtail Space conference to see some content representation, some input into the roadmap. And perhaps even a retrospective in that way. And I think also just understanding all of the use cases of Wagtail and who those users are, and making sure that we are being inclusive of all of that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I'm looking around for more questions. No? Okay, Lisa, thanks a great deal. So I'd like to ask you to go outside for our group photo. And after that, we can have coffee. For our online viewers, we will be back in half an hour.